We're human beings, with the blood of 1,000,000 savage years on our hands, but we can stop it. We can admit that we're killers, but we're not going to kill today. That's all it takes. Knowing that we won't kill today. Peace or utter destruction. It's up to you. Now, it may seem tasteless to bridge a text from Star Trek to the current unrest in the United States, but this is what I think of when I think of what's coming out of places like Portland. Back in the primordial mists of late May, George Floyd was killed by police officers. The world saw it. We spent a week or so trying to process how sickened we were by it. People's thoughts naturally ran to protest and reform, which we all supported and still support. Others, including myself, began to think about how we might get something positive, potentially, out of this, by thinking of things to say and do that might prevent future harm, not just by the police, over whose actions we have very limited control, but also harm as a consequence of civilian response, over which we have much more direct control by exercising our thoughts on social media and by speaking with the people that we have meaningful access to. Our friends. I began to try having conversations with people I wouldn't normally have conversations with. And the response was not entirely welcoming. On one thread, I was dismissed as a troll, even for taking the position that I had, even though I had at no point been in any way remotely uncivil. But I decided I would still try to have conversations, and I'm still doing that. That was back in May. At this time of recording, at least 29 people, and this is now an old statistic, are confirmed to have died since the civil rights protests began in the US after the death of George Floyd. In Los Angeles, homicides have risen by 250%. Some are a consequence of good faith protests getting out of control. Others are the result of unmitigated police action. The greatest share is at this time thought to be due to opportunists emboldened by civil disorder. I don't have any stats on that, so that may change over the coming weeks. I welcome any correction. At this point, the end goal for, let's call it the counter-state movement, seems less and less clear. Major new bills, including the all-important Qualified Immunity Act, designed to allow police to be criminally accountable in violent situations, have been pushed through with expediency since June, with 47 states and municipalities folding in with the proposals. So what next? Does anybody know? What bit of paper has to be signed before we can declare this lesson learned? Because you have to recognize that no matter where you stand on this issue, ultimately there will have to be a bit of paper. Otherwise you can resign yourself to a life of perpetual conflict, or decide to somehow defeat the world, neither of which are options we can sustain without scheduling Armageddon. So who's got the right bit of paper? Does anybody even know what the right bit of paper would look like? Maybe you know. What happens next? Will you kill anybody today?